Thank you. Thank you, Jim. They're going to be bringing up a thing. By the way, for you guys standing, I would hate to be standing the whole time. There's like seats here and over here. Do you guys want to come over and join us, or are you guys just making a quick getaway in case this isn't that good, or whatever you want. Anyway, no pressure, no pressure. Thank you for having me. This place is absolutely unbelievable. I saw how many of you hadn't been here before. I don't think I'd been here before either, and now I'm obsessed with it, and I just don't want to leave, and which I have to, I know. But I'm also thinking that, like, if there's ever like a zombie apocalypse, this is where we should come. Like, all of us, we all work with Deloitte. They have to let us in with those badges. It's an amazing, amazing spot. It's really an unbelievable sort of like group. I was kind of like overhearing some of the conversations you guys were having. So here's what I want to talk about today. The reason that I'm here is I want to share with you all the stuff that I do with big organizations kind of around the world, which is thinking about this one big question. And that one big question is, how do we lead through AI? How do we lead through this agentic era that we're now going through? Because the big thing that I keep running into is that this is about more than the tools. And I think in the next 24 hours, you're going to be exposed to a lot of amazing tools. You already are probably experienced and exposed to a lot of amazing tools, but that is not enough, right? And so the thing that I see every day out there with sort of like big organizations and training organizations that scale is this. The problem is not the tool. The tool is great. Sort of like we saw some of those amazing charts, and Jim was sort of spelling this out, and like now we have like 10 PhDs in our pocket, and I'm like, I don't know if I need all 10, but you know, this idea that this technology is so incredible that it's just going to sort of like change the way we do everything. But it actually hasn't really, and I'm going to be a little bit controversial here maybe, but adoption is very, very high in a way, right? We've sort of like seen this. We sort of like saw how fast it's accelerating, everything like that. Let me just make sure that my slides are, do I have slides? I have slides, right? Yeah. The idea is that we have this moment in time where adoption is increasing, but when we think about adoption, there's adoption and there's adoption. Do you know what I mean? Like, and you guys are probably, I'm guessing, maybe if you're at the AI Forum, you may be power users. And I'm guessing that you are power users, but there's a tremendous number of folks in your organization, on your teams, whatever, who are not, right? They're just not using it. And you're just there sort of like wanting to shake them and be like, guys, let's use this. So what I want to talk about today is not about the tool, although we're going to be doing a demo I want to show you, but more about how we shift our behavior to really drive adoption across an entire organization. Because that is the big struggle that I have seen. People kind of like are adopting it, but they're only using it like 2 or 3 times a week. If you're a power user, that feels crazy, right, to only use it 2 or 3 times a week. So how do we shift the behavior across an organization? Because if you have these tools, that's great. But that's just, it's a commodity. I mean, it's table stakes. You need these tools that we're going to be talking about all for this next 24 hours. But much more importantly, you need to sort of like have everybody using them so that they're not just, you know, using these tools every once in a while, but they're changing the way they think and the way they work. And that's differentiation. That's how you change your company. It's not by getting the tool that everybody else is going to get like that. It's by changing the way everyone in the organization thinks. That's why we do this at scale. So what I want to do here is I want to kind of like walk you through what we do and how we do this. And the importance of that is so that you can see that I believe that there really is a path, and it really is different from maybe how we've been doing it in the past, how we've done trainings in the past. This is all about behavioral-based training rather than just training on the tool. So again, the things I'm going to be talking about, for some of you, it'll be like, oh no, I understand that. That's not the point. The point is not whether you know how to do it. That's not the Holy Grail. The Holy Grail is, can you get everyone else doing it at the same level if you're a power user of doing this, okay? So I want to show you this system that we have and this framework that we have. So first of all, what makes this moment different? So this is the thing that I sort of like let down. By the way, don't worry about reading it. It's very hard to read. But this is a question I asked Google Gemini, I think early 2024. And remember what we're doing here. We're talking about how to drive adoption in a different kind of way. So when you think about this, this is what goes out at scale to an organization, okay? So Gemini, I was like, hey, I can't get this thing to work on my Mac, which is like this, like a 3-fingered swipe, You know, like when you're trying to sort of like, make all the windows splay around. And it kept giving me the wrong answer. Okay? And the important part of that is exactly why it gave me the wrong answer and what it gave me. So this is not surprising to anybody. This is typical generative AI chatbot. It sounds like a human. That's amazing, but we're used to that. That's not the point. The point is, let's just kind of like spin through this real fast. First of all, it apologizes for the mistake, right? Which is, technology should apologize to us all the time. It never does, right? And then it goes down into the next thing. The reason I gave you this instruction is it's the same one Apple gave me, which is it getting defensive, which is hilarious, right? Like, so it's kind of bizarre that technology gets defensive. I'm in a marriage. I know what it's like to be defensive. Also, if you don't know if you're the defensive one in a marriage, you're the defensive one. So anyway, so the next one down, it's like, I've done some research. You all know it didn't do any research, right? That's not how these tools work. They are statistical probability machines. So when you're trying to sort of like drive this adoption, you might do something like this. This is audience participation here for a second, guys, so just hear me out. Finish this sentence for me. I think, therefore, I... Yes, I think, therefore, I am. Why did we say am? Because the probability that it was going to be am was off the charts. That's all this is doing, right? It's just sort of like predicting the next thing. So you have to help people understand that the reason it's sounding like this is it's kind of like how we talk, right? If you say the apple, it might be CEO or apple pie, depending on the context. Yeah? So people have to understand all that. But this is the part I want to really show you. I've checked the system preferences on my own Mac. And here's why I focus on this. This kind of just looks like a hallucination. Like, oh yeah, it's a hallucination. I don't think so. I don't think so. As we know, the way that these things talk is to statistically predict the next word. And so when it's done its training data, where does it find information about helping people with their Macs? On like message boards, Reddit, things like that, right? Okay, sidebar for a second. My son Finn is 16 now. When he was 2, we had a dog named Emma. And Finn thought my dog Emma, he thought her name was Emma No. And if you have a dog, you'll understand that immediately because Emma ate trash. And so it's like, Emma, no, Emma. So he just thought the dog's name was Emma No. Why? Because that's what I called the dog. I mean, I was good. I was also petting the dog and stuff. But like a lot of times, I was yelling at the dog. So when they're doing these training data for like Gemini and everything else, and you're on the message board, how do people tend to answer a question like, hey, I can't get this thing to work on my Mac? How do people tend to answer? They say something like, I've checked the system preferences on my own Mac. It just thinks that's how you talk. Why are we hovering on this so much? We're hovering on this because what people think, and Jim was doing a great job, and Lynn was doing a great job about kind of talking about how your organizations are just people, how people are thinking about this. And they look at this and they're like, oh, it's a cool party trick. It's not a party trick. This is a software that behaves like a human, okay? It's a software that behaves like a human, and our brains are not set up for that. Also, people are thinking, well, I'm not good at it, I'm not digital, I'm not technical. Me neither, I'm not technical. It has nothing to do with that, nothing to do with that. It has everything to do with how you talk and how you relate. And if you understand that this is a software that behaves in every single way like a human, then all of a sudden it demystifies it, it eases sort of the transition into it, but the problem is you can't just tell people that, you have to show them. So I want to show you how we can show them. Okay, by the way, this clicker only has a forward button, which is like the most Deloitte thing ever, right? Like there's no going back. No, if you screw up, that's it, keep going. It's the AI forum, no time to lose, right? Okay, we consistently underestimate how different AI is, and by that, if you're in this room, by the way, I know the list in this room, you have done something very, very right if you made it into this room. A lot of people didn't, not to be a jerk, but good job. It constantly looks like a digital transformation. You've been through it. You've been through digital transformations, right? It doesn't act anything like a digital transformation. I would argue, now by the way, I'm not talking about technical stuff around agents and data. I'm talking about inference. I'm talking about how people use this every day. There's almost no correlation between this and a digital transformation, almost none. If you could look at digital maturity scales, things like that, no correlation whatsoever. This acts completely and totally like change management, which is why I would venture to say you are in the right room, because this is what Deloitte does. It's change management. There's no tech to this at all. And again, I'm talking about people actually using this to change, not just become more productive, but change how they think, how they work, to differentiate so that everybody can innovate their own role. That's differentiation. Okay, here's the critical part. This is where training goes wrong when you're trying to upskill your organization. Your brain loves learning curves, right? And again, if you're in this room, you've learned something very well, right? And your brain loves it. If you're learning like French or calculus or Excel or something, there's a learning curve, right? Your brain like learns, and then that's it, it's off and running. Okay. But there's a lot of things that don't have a learning curve, like getting healthier, right? Getting into better shape. No learning curve. We already kind of know. We know what we need to do. We need to basically, like, I'm talking to myself here, we need to basically like eat less and exercise, okay? So here's my point on this. There's no learning curve associated with the treadmill. I own a treadmill somewhere it's in my house. I think it's in the basement. Point being, when I bought my treadmill like 2 years ago, I bought the best treadmill. I bought the best one. It had all the features, like it had, like, I don't know what the features are because I haven't used it in a long, but it's like, it had buttons on it, and it had this screen where you could imagine that you were like running in the Andes, things like, it was amazing. And I was imagining when I got on this treadmill, it's gonna change my life. Everybody's like, Con, it's gonna change your life. And I was imagining myself coming out of the ocean, and my wife's like, oh, who's that? What's that physique? Right? Okay, so I got on the treadmill, and what happened? I got off it like 5 minutes later, right? Why? Why did I get off? So we could say, oh, it's because you weren't in shape. No, it isn't. I certainly didn't get off the treadmill and think, oh, I better read. Let me look up how to run on a treadmill, right? I didn't have to learn anything. I got off it because my brain prioritizes quick rewards and conserving energy, and that doesn't do either one of those things, right? Like your caveman brain is like, you are dying right now. You're running for no reason. What if a bear comes out, right? So meanwhile, like a couch and a bowl of Doritos, your brain's like, yes, this is survival, right? Like the point is, no learning curve. It's all behavioral. This is a large language model. That's a large language model. I don't care how many features it has. You either get on it or you don't. So how do we shift behavior? There's nothing to learn with large language models. I would say that they are extremely accessible, extremely powerful, no learning curve. And by the way, large language models are at the heart of agents. We're going to get to that in a second. But if we don't understand the brain inside agents, giant air quotes, the brain inside agents, we're not going to be able to do any of this. I would argue that it's really accessible. It's very powerful. And again, as I said, there's no learning curve. How do we know? Because all you have to do is talk to it like a human. That's it. There's nothing. I don't teach prompt engineering, and I don't teach use cases. Not that use cases aren't super valuable. Hopefully you do a lot of them this week. But you can't teach in that way. Why can't you teach in that way? Well, I'm going to get to that. Point being, there's nothing to learn. The way you talk to a human, you give clear instructions, you give that, like, let's say you had a new colleague. What do? You give them clear instructions. You sort of say the purpose of the task. You give them context. Hey, here's what good looks like. Hey, here's about the client, blah, 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 right? And then you set them off. And then what do? You get the work back and you refine back and forth with them, like, oh, you can change this, like, let's make this better, right? That's it. That's what you do with AI too. This idea that, like, oh, you have to follow this framework. What framework? You already know how to talk like a human. No learning curve, accessible, powerful. Why is adoption, real adoption, why is it slow across every organization I've worked with, and I've worked with a ton? Why is it slow? Here's why. The first thing, you see this in keynotes all the time. Don't worry too much about the companies up here, it's irrelevant. The point is down there, it's like ChatGPT reached 1 million users in 3 days, right? And you're supposed to be like, amazing, now we got to use it because it's so good, right? But people don't. Okay. The thing about this slide is that the ChatGPT part is the least interesting part on here. The really interesting part is everything else on this slide. Here's what I mean. Okay, sorry, more audience participation here, okay? We good with this? Okay, I'm going to ask you what each thing on here replaces, okay? Okay, not each one, but a couple. Okay, Netflix, what does Netflix replace? Blockbuster, yes. This is my generation right here, Blockbuster. Airbnb replaces, like the hotel system, all that kind of stuff. Like, we can kind of keep on going down here. By the way, my favorite one, I was doing this, so I'm on the MBA side of NYU, but I was doing this for undergrads one time, 18-year-olds, and I was going down there getting all this, and then I got to Spotify. I was like, what does Spotify replace? And they were like, what do you mean, what does it replace? I was like, right. So it wasn't like cavemen using digital. Anyway, point being that we know what these things replace. Your brain knows what these things replace. That's important. Why is that important? It's because of how the brain works. Your brain just switches things out. If you had like the hammer, that replaced like the rock, and the rock like replaced your hand. Everything replaces something, okay? Everything replaces something. And if you don't know, your brain is going to subconsciously decide, and it is going to decide probably wrong. Quick example of that, my dad is an old Irish guy, and I gave him his first iPhone back in probably like 2011 or something. I'm trying to remember what it was, but gave him his first iPhone, and he's like, no, remember the flip phone? He had a flip phone, remember? He's like, oh, no, I like my flip phone. I'm like, Dad, this is better, trust me. He's like, oh, no keypad on it. I'm like, I know, but like, just try it. He's like, okay. Gave him this iPhone. He was like, oh, whatever. He kind of put it down. I'm like, Dad. But anyway, so I went home, and he didn't call me for like a week, 2 weeks. Finally, he called me. He's like, Connor, this thing's amazing. I'm like, I know, it's amazing, right? He's like, you know what this thing has? I'm like, yes. He's like, it has a flashlight. Did you know this phone, the phone has a flashlight, the phone. I'm like, I did know that. What happened? I told him it was replacing his flip phone. Doesn't replace your flip phone. iPhone replaces like how you order Ubers and personal banking and how you, your social life if you're a teenager, and how you watch shows. It replaces all these things. But you think my dad had a concept that I was about to give him a phone that wasn't a phone, it did something totally different? No, of course not. His brain was just like, okay, it's a phone. I'm telling you this is important because this is what your brain does. This is why adoption, and again, I mean real adoption, not using ChatGPT 3 times a week. I'm talking about using this for everything you do in your life, within reason, is slow. Okay, we have to think about how we think. Forget the tech for a second, forget it. Our brain does a few things really well. It does pattern prediction automation. Right? So why is that important here? Well, let's talk about automation for a second. Automation is the idea of using neural pathways to automate things in your brain. Okay, so what does that look like? Well, imagine if you are, you're driving the same way to work every day for 10 years or something, and then you change jobs and you instinctively keep doing that, right? So that's muscle memory. That's when muscle memory goes bad. But also muscle memory, I mean, I'm holding a clicker right now and I'm just clicking without thinking, or you're drinking coffee, or you're doing a million things, driving in the pouring rain. When you first learned to drive, you had to really focus on driving, right? You had to really focus on it. But now, you don't even think about it. You like drive, my daughter is 14 and she was looking at my feet as I was driving through town like 2 weeks ago. And she was like, Dad, when are you hitting the accelerator and when are you hitting the brake? And I'm like, actually, I don't, and it freaked me. I'm like, I don't know. I had to like pull over, right? Because you don't think about it. Now you can drive in the rain, pouring rain, have a conversation. Muscle memory. Okay, why is that important? It's kind of everything. Because your brain works on visual cues. Muscle memory often works on visual cues. And what I mean by that, if there was like if we had like a baby sitting up here for some weird reason, like I wouldn't accidentally talk to the baby like it was a college professor or something like that, right? I wouldn't say like, oh, what do I say to this? Like, do I ask it? No, you just know. That's muscle memory. That's automation in your brain, okay? That's a visual cue kind of at work. Now, why is that important? It's important because that's what your brain loves most. It loves these visual cues. It sees something. It doesn't have to decide. That's how we've survived. That's how cavemen survived. It automated that. So what is the point here? Okay, what I'm about to show you I swear to God, it took like 18 months to figure it out. So bear with me. This is going to look unbelievably stupid, but here we are. Okay, this is a ChatGPT window. What does this look like? What does it look like? This all white what website, all white, has a kind of like a search bar thing at the bottom. What does this look like? You've been using it every day for 20 years. What website does it look like? Yeah, it looks like Google. Here's the interesting thing, or at least I think it's interesting. When your brain is looking at that, ChatGPT, it literally thinks it's looking at Google. It literally thinks it's looking at Google. So why is that such an unbelievable problem? By the way, everybody's brain does it. It's just, you can't help it. You can't use Google every day for 20 years and then just be like, oh, well, maybe this baby won't talk like a baby. Maybe this one will talk. No, your brain just kind of goes to it. Okay. Now the thing is, large language models, things like this, which again are built into agents, so this is why this is relevant here. they have search engine tools that they can call upon, everything like that. It's not about whether it can be used as a search engine. The point is, how do you use search engines? How does your muscle memory use search engines? Here's how you do it. You give it a command, and you get a response, and you walk away. That's it. You do the same thing every time, in the same way that I'm pushing those accelerators and brakes, and I'm not thinking about it. You just do it. You don't think about it. That's problematic. That's problematic because we have millions, and I would say billions of people around the world treating AI like a fancy search engine, and they don't even realize they're doing it. But that's literally what's happening in your brain. So what do we do about that, right? Because I could just sort of say that like, oh, and then it's a TED Talk. But no, what we do is we think, how do we start rewiring the way people think to get them out of that? Because changing behavior is not always easy. But in this case, what if we could do it? Okay. So in this case, I want to just kind of share a couple of paradigms about how we think about this. They have goofy names, sorry, but first one is the Costa Rica paradigm, okay? Imagine you are planning a trip to Costa Rica. Okay, so remember what we've done, okay? We've sort of shined a spotlight on what's going wrong in our brains, what's stopping adoption for so many people in so many companies by the tens of thousands, millions, right? And now we're going to talk about how to start rewiring. You're in a lobby, you have two doors in front of you, you're planning your trip to Costa Rica, you can go behind door number one. Behind door number one is a Google search engine, great. Give me the top 10 things to do in Costa Rica. And it spits it out, and it's Google. It's going to be great. You know, it's great search engine algorithm. It finds the best magazine around, whatever. So you take that, and then you go plan your trip to Costa Rica. Like, oh, well, this is good. Maybe this, nah, I don't know about this one, but let me see if there's anything else, right? But it's a great starting point. Okay. But imagine instead you went behind door number two. And behind door number two is the head of the Costa Rican tourism board. And you walk back there and he's like, hey, you're going to Costa Rica. I am. Amazing. Who's going? Well, my wife is going and I have 2 high school kids. Okay, first question. Is this more of adventure or more relaxation? Because Costa Rica is great with both. Oh, good question. So for me and my wife, it's relaxation. We work hard. My kids, you know, they want adventure. Okay, that helps define where we're going to be in the country. Now let me ask you this. All right, okay, point being, after an hour, we would have this unbelievable itinerary for Costa Rica, right? It would be bespoke to us. We would have gone back and forth. It's great. It's obviously better. Okay. Here's what you would never do. You would never walk into the head of the Costa Rican tourism board and have him say, hey, so great that you're here. How can I help you? Let's plan an amazing trip to Costa Rica. And you say, yes, give me the top 10 things to do in Costa Rica. He's like, absolutely. Let me first understand who's going. And you'd say, sir, that's not what I asked. I asked you for the top 10 things to do in Costa Rica. And he's like, of course. But the top 10 things differ depending, that's why we should talk about it. And you're like, sir, I swear to God, I want the top 10 things to do in Costa Rica or I'm going to freak out right now, right? Or something, maybe not that much. And now he thinks you're like a sociopath. And he's like, okay, sure. He writes down the top 10 things and you're like, thank you. Is that so hard, right? And you storm out. You would never do that, I hope. You would never do that. Again, it's like sociopathic behavior, but also it totally ignores his entire value proposition. It ignores his value proposition. The whole point is that he can talk back and forth and you can figure things out and iterate and all that kind of stuff. That's the point. It's the entire point. So what does that mean? It means that search engines do this, but AI does this. ChatGPT, you could tell ChatGPT, you are the head of the Costa Rican tourism board. And it'd be like, hola, Connor. I don't know any more Spanish. But like it would kind of it would talk to you like that. It's an iterative conversation. So what's the problem? The problem is very simple. Your brain cannot look, this is where I won't use the back button, cannot look over at that Google search engine and think, you know what? Maybe this baby isn't a baby. Maybe this baby. No, it can't look at that and think, I wonder if I should talk to this like a human. Your brain doesn't let you do that. It's not how your brain works. We have to remember this is the head of the Costa Rican tourism board. It is not a search engine. So when we're talking to teams, if we're just saying, guys, just use it, just talk to it like a person, you have to understand why that doesn't work. It doesn't work because their brains are working like normal human brains and it doesn't work. You have to take them to understand why their brains are having a hard time and then give them new paradigms and frameworks and everything else. You can't just say, guys, find your use cases and talk to it like a person. It's like saying, eat less and exercise, guys, okay? Okay, great. Now, everybody go be healthy, eat less and exercise. We already know that part. We have to shift and rewire. Okay, Next one, this is what I call the use case trap. So as I said, I don't teach in prompt engineering. I don't teach use cases. Again, not that you're not going to find some phenomenal ones this weekend. I just mean, or this week, sorry. I just mean that teaching in use cases doesn't work when you're trying to drive adoption. And we're talking about adoption here. So why not? I call this the time machine paradigm. I know, as I said, goofy ideas here in terms of titles, but imagine you have a time machine. You go back in time to whenever before the light bulb was invented, and you're like, hey, everybody, the light bulb. And they're like, this is amazing. It's going to change everything, right? Factories can stay open later. And all of a sudden, like imagine there's like a dad that's trying, doesn't want open flames in his daughter's bedroom. It's amazing. Or streets that want to be safe. Amazing. Or imagine a factory, and that factory like hand sews shirts. Okay, I can see this better. And then they have to deliver their shirts. So now you can light up the stables, where you can get the horses out and deliver the shirts better. Like, the light bulb has changed everything. Okay, it's great. You're a hero. Get back in your time machine. You come back to 2025. And then a month later, you go back. And you're like, I've brought you something even better. And they're like, no chance. What could be better than the light bulb? And you're like, this is infinitely more powerful than the light bulb. They're like, come on, get out of here. What is it? And you're like, I brought you electricity. And they're like, that's infinitely more powerful than the light bulb. And you're like, infinitely. And they're like, great. How do you use it? Okay, so you're standing in front of all these people, whatever, churning their butter or whatever, and they're like, how do you use this? What do you say? What do you say to them? Because there's no good answer. You're like, well, it kind of depends. And they're like, it depends on what? Depends on what you do. What do you mean, what do I do? Like, I do a lot of things. Like, I have to love my neighbor, and I have to get my kids off to school, and I have to sweep this floor, and I have to dig this ditch, and we need a new well over here, and I need to sort of like go to work, and I need to earn a living, and I need to take care of my mom. And what do you mean, what do I need to do? That's not helpful. You're like, okay, well, I guess, it can galvanize rubber. Anybody, or they're like, well, what are you talking? Here's the point. Nobody wakes up in the morning and is like, what are some use cases for electricity today? Like, what are some great ways that electricity can help? Right? No, you start with we walk into a dark room and instinctively electricity, right? And you're wearing clothes that were made by electricity, and you're in a building that was made by electricity, and you can see me because of electricity, and hear me because of electricity. Your coffee is hot because of electricity. We've used electricity like 50 times already today. Did you ever stop to think, you know what? I'll bet electricity is going to help. No. You start with your problem. You start with what you're doing. That's the problem with AI. We keep starting with what it can do instead of starting with what people need to do. Talk to me about your day right now. What do you do all day? Talk to me about that. That's how we start this process. That's why use cases, standalone use cases, if we start there, don't drive adoption. They can be great if you're already adopted. If you guys are great at this stuff, then it's great. But it doesn't work for others. Real quick, 4 horsemen of the AI adoption apocalypse that I talk about all the time. Here's the things that everybody does and they don't work. Number 1, lighthouse cases. Hey, this is what Company X did. This is Company Y did. It's great if you're already on this journey. But for somebody that doesn't know how to use this thing, they will walk out not knowing how to use this thing. Sorry, they won't. Again, does not pertain if you're in this room and you already know. I'm talking about how to differentiate your whole company. Okay? Number 2, the tool rollout. It's like thinking you're going to put a treadmill in every house in America and you're going to cure heart disease. It doesn't work because it's a behavioral shift. Okay? Number 3 is use cases for this reason. Not that use cases aren't helpful, but you can't start with them to drive adoption across an organization. I'm talking tens of thousands of people here. And the 4th is AI champions. I love AI champions. I love the model, but it can't start with that. Why? If you had a team that you wanted everybody on that team to do yoga, and you got the one guy that does yoga every morning, like, oh, that guy's going to teach everybody how to do yoga every morning, right? He can teach them. At the end of the month, everybody will know. That's a learning curve, standard learning curve. But he cannot get everybody doing yoga every morning after he leaves. He can't. So to rely on AI champions for accountability, all that, that's great. To rely on them for teaching and driving adoption does not work. Okay. I'm going to dive into this framework real quick now. The framework used to be sort of like use case based, but we realized this isn't helpful. So I'm just going to give you a tiny taste of what this framework looks like. Learn, execute, strategize. Just focuses on what do you need to do? You need to learn things at work. You need to strategize. You need to communicate. And your brain is flawed at all these things. It's flawed. How is it flawed? And how do we use this to change that. Could we change over to the browser? Okay, can you guys see that in the back okay? Okay, here's what I'm talking about here. And again, don't think of this as a use case because this is simplistic. Think about it instead about how you're going to drive this at scale so that instead of 10,000 people in your organization, some of whom are using, imagine having 10,000 innovators who are using this with everything they do and rethinking work entirely. By the way, let me say one other thing as I'm about to jump into this. With the electricity thing, that's that factory. Lighting up how you hand sew things, lighting up the horses. It's great. They're going to be like, nothing, technology will never get better than this. But imagine, company next door takes electricity, and they're like, you know what? I want everybody here to rethink how they work. So all of a sudden, the person hand sewing doesn't just light up with a couple of use cases, light bulb. Like, well, what if I use electricity for a sewing machine? Better quality, faster. And these people in the horse stable, they're like, well, what if we had an airplane and flew this from New York to Denver? Do you see what I mean? It's a wildly different prospect when everybody is upskilled, not just when you're telling everybody to use one tool. Okay, so in that vein, here's what I like to do. Hopefully this works. Hey, my boss is asking me if we need an OpenAI API key, but I don't know what that is. Help, something like that, right? And then you're hitting go, and then it's like, no worries, here's a quick breakdown, all that kind of stuff. This is incredibly simple, incredibly simple. Here's the point. The point is, in a way, that's the best thing about ChatGPT. But in a way, it's also the worst. It's the worst thing about ChatGPT. It's the best because now instead of Google, you have your friend that you can just take and shake them, and you want to sort of like illustrate this to people. And often we say, like, look what it can do. And then people are like, okay, I'll use that every once in a while. That's not adoption. That's every once in a while they're going to use this instead of a search engine. The problem here is that all we have done here is build ourselves a fancier Google. You're not going to differentiate your organization with a better search engine. And all we have done is create a better version of Google. It gives you a better answer than clicking on the blue links. Okay? People stop here because they're like, this is so great. And we're like, no. All you did was get a slightly better search engine. This is what I mean. This is where we start diverging from Google. And I don't mean Google, I mean Google search, obviously. This is where we start diverging from search. Yeah, that's great and all, but my boss is walking in now, and I need something short and smart to say, hurry, she's gonna fire me, and I can't lose another job. My wife is gonna leave me, help, something like that, right? Okay, now it's like, here's your quick line, say this, it's basically a source code, that's it, calm, confident, you know. That's not a search engine. You can't yell at your PDF like, no, but my wife's gonna leave me. Your PDF's just gonna be like, you know what I mean? Like there's nothing to do. This is all of a sudden a person. Remember, this is the head of the Costa Rican Tourism Board. Remember? When you buy a drill, why are we buying a drill? Has anybody ever heard this? What are you buying when you buy a drill? Yeah, you're buying out like a hole in the wall. Don't stop till you get your hole in the wall. This is what people have to understand at scale. Otherwise, they're just using it as a search engine instead of reinventing their entire role. This is not on you as leaders. We're going to talk about that in a second, too. Also, she loves Gen Z slang, so can you give it to me like that in super slang, something like that, right? And then it's like, sure, say this. It's like a secret code. We only need it if we're trying to plug it up. Otherwise, we're chill. Confident tone, maybe a shrug, maybe add a shrug like Gen Z people. Do you see the point? Don't stop till you get your quarter-inch hole. Don't stop till you get what you need. That's what people have to understand. They're using it wrong. That's why adoption keeps stalling, because their brain doesn't let them do it, and because they keep stalling. Okay, we could keep on going. We have 1 million of these, and all of them demonstrate literally how it behaves like a person and not a software. One of my favorites is if you're going to, hey, let's iterate on some ideas here for this pitch script. You could say, give me the best version you can, but how would it work with a human? With a human, you'd go back and forth. Right? You'd iterate with that human. You can't just say, hey, new person, just give me the best thing possible, the best thing you can do. And they'd be like, okay, sure, like here it is, No, the way to make it better is like, okay, now I'm going to pretend I'm the client. I'm going to poke holes in that. Now go do it again. Same with this. It doesn't just give you the first answer out. it's not going to be the best answer. Instead, you have to go back and forth, but it can't get those answers unless you go back and forth. That's the crazy thing about AI. It acts like a human. But if we just say, just talk to it like a human, just find use cases, just eat less and exercise, your brain doesn't do it. You have to take them through frameworks. Could we go back to the deck? Okay, here's where I kind of like want to wrap this, and then we're going to have Q&A, just in case we have Q's and we have A's here. Okay, not A, that sounded bad. We have we'll have questions. We'll have some time for that. But this is just what I want to talk about for the next 2 minutes here. We have to start reimagining our organization, okay? And I do a lot with this, if you know the SHRM Foundation, like the biggest HR organization. So I'm on the board of that because I do this work all the time. In HR culture, I loved when Jim put up that thing and everybody said talent and culture. I totally agree. Data, we'll have to solve the data problem. The data problem is always a problem. Talent and culture. How do we drive this? Okay, and this is what we do all the time, HR. In the past, the people who created tech have always defined what the roles are. Think about it. You invent the computer. You know that somebody needs to make a silicon chip, somebody needs to make a keyboard, somebody needs to do this, somebody needs to deliver it. Or at service industry, hey, we have this, like somebody needs to do this. The creators of the service or the technology have always defined the roles. No more. No more. Okay, so what does it look like now? In an AI-first organization, these new roles arise organically. I've done a ton of work around this. Here's what I see all the time. Again, I work with, if you can imagine the big tech vendors, I work with all of them on this stuff. On this stuff. Because you can work for Peloton, but it doesn't mean you're in great shape, right? So this is why I work with some of those giant vendors to train their teams. How crazy is that? But I can tell you this, they don't know what the future of work is. They don't know. We're all guessing. Can we just admit that we're all guessing? But here's what I do know. I do know that it's not going to be the leaders of the technology, and I do know it's not going to be the leaders of your organization who are going to figure that out. You know who's going to figure it out? The people inside your organization. If you've ever, I think of this as like the Apocalypse Now or Heart of Darkness thing. It's like, wow, Colonel Kurtz is doing something crazy down there. We should probably go figure out how he's being so, giant air quotes, successful. What you're going to find is that you're going to upskill everybody in the organization, and then you're going to say, hey, everybody now use this and figure out what this looks like in your particular role, because the leader can't possibly figure that out. And then the person's like, well, this is my process. And so then the leader starts to say a team of 3 in building 4 on the 6th floor doing the work of like 14 people, and they're going to go together like, what are you doing? Well, we're starting to use AI, and we've now integrated agents into this, and this is how we're thinking about this. And we're like, okay, we got to codify that. That's a new process. And then you start codifying that process. That's how it's going to work. The people who are going to figure this out. Now, first of all, the people at the top, leaders have to set benchmarks. You need to know what a new 8-hour day looks like now with the agentic era. You need to know. In the same way, once you gave your accountant to Excel, the 8-hour day changed. Okay? So you need to know what the capabilities of agentic AI is. However, more importantly is you need to know that people are going to use it. Okay? Because I'm telling you, right now, people struggle with this. Last thing I just want to say on this. This is incredibly obvious, but there's one point to it. So right now, we have these incredible workflow agents. You're going to hear a lot about them, and they're fantastic. We are not at the point where these things are just autonomous and they're going to run by themselves. It's not there yet. But here's the most important thing. You see that dude, the non-robot dude? That's the most important thing in this whole slide. Because you need quality control. Do not make the mistake of thinking agents are automations. It's not a calculator. It's not an automatic mail sorting machine. These all have large language models in the middle. So all of this training can't be skipped over. Why? Because otherwise people will say like, oh, I used my agent to do this, but it made a mistake. Yeah, because it can make mistakes. It can make mistakes just like a person can make mistakes. And people are like, well, I get this with law firms all the time. Well, we don't use it because our junior agents are using AI and they're giving us hallucinations. What should we do? Or they're giving us false information. What should we do? I'm like, fire them. What are you talking? Fire them. Like if that person was giving you wrong information all the time, would you keep them on board? No. You, I'm talking sort of like the grand you of the world, are the most important thing. It has to be quality control. Whatever we hear about agents, and you're going to hear some powerful stuff, and it's really critical. A human has to stay in the loop. Why? Because 99 times it's going to be amazing, it's going to be speeding through, but it's not a calculator. It's not going to start smoking if it does something wrong. You have to create a methodology for quality control. That's it. Okay, I am going to pause here. By the way, this is LinkedIn. Don't feel like you have to click on this, follow to anything else. It's only if we don't get to your question or if you had follow-up questions later. I'm very easy to find on LinkedIn. I'm kind of on there every day just in case, but no pressure. Okay, So I think we have a few minutes now, maybe 5-6 minutes to do some questions. Does anyone have thoughts, questions? Yes, please. There's one. Oh, here comes the microphone.
Thank you very much, Connor. This is great. I wanted to ask about the AI that we are all used to from like 1956 and later. So the confusion exists in people's mind between the machine learning side of AI and then, of course, the generative AI. So the machine learning does not act as a human, and it's really hard to explain the difference to people when they, again, all they see is this ChatGPT behaving as a person. So I agree with you about the acting. Basically, should we name it differently maybe so that people get away from the...
Yes. I'm calling it kind of like AI, even though I know probably like a lot of you, it's fingers on the chalkboard, am I right when I say AI? Because AI is this concentric circle, then you have machine learning, then you have generative AI, and then you have large language models. AI essentially is sort of a term of art in this conversation for a large language model, but I love that you brought this up, and here's why. As you said, AI has been around since the 50s. Why is this all of a sudden so different and so hard to use? So first of all, what you're talking about, it's not just an algorithm that says, oh, well, old reviews look like this, so new reviews will look like this. It's not just data in, data out. It's now generative. That's the problem. When you have something generative, it can screw up, just like people. So here's the analogy I like to use, if you'll allow me real quick, because this also goes to the question when people will say, and they will say, they already have said, I just don't know what to use it for. Have you heard that? I just don't know what to use it. I know, but I just don't know what to use it. I know it's great. Okay, here's why. AI has been around for a long time, but it's always existed in this very tight user interface. Hey, I need you to look at these past things and give me a prediction on this. Machine learning, right? Super straightforward. This new thing, generative AI, is different because it essentially rips the user interface off AI, says, now I can create things too, which is dangerous. It's like having like a 5-year-old being like, I'm in the kitchen, right? Like it's like, okay, but hold on, let's just be careful here. So if that's the case, why is it so hard? Well, it rips the user interface off and says this, ask me anything at all. Ask me anything at all. That's problematic. So first of all, we have to know that the output can hallucinate because it can generate things. Why can it generate? Because it's going to say, like, it's not going to say the same thing every time. If you ask it a question, not every time it's not going to say, like, the apple fell from the tree. Sometimes it'll be like, the apple pie was resting, or the Apple CEO, because it's based on probabilities, and probabilities change. That I think you guys are all very familiar with. My interest around this on adoption is this. When people say, I can't think of anything to use it for, that's because their brain is acting like a human brain. We've ripped the user interface off, and now we have a blank thing. That's awful. It's the tyranny of the blank page. Sorry, last little paradigm here. 2 ninth grade classes next to each other. One ninth grade class says, hey, write a 3-page paper. On what? Let's make this easy. Anything you want. Anything you want, okay? Second ninth grade class. Write a 3-page paper. On what? Let's make this easy. On 4 people you met over the last week, how you know them, what you did afterwards, how it might have changed your mood. Okay. First one should be easier. No guardrails, anything, totally anything. The second one is easier because your brain needs templates. When people are looking at this and saying, I don't know what to ask it, it's because their brains are functioning normally. Pattern, prediction, automation. That's why we talk about starting with a problem, starting with a thought. This is why OpenAI started putting like those conversation starters. It's like you'd open it up, remember these? It'd be like, hey, are you planning a trip to Barcelona? You're like, what? No, I'm not planning a trip. What are you talking about? Because it's trying to get over that hurdle. But we can't because that's not how our brains work. The tyranny of that empty box when people say, I don't know what to use it for, we have to steer them not toward what AI can do, but what they need to do, and then bring in the AI. Please.
So, did you see the South Park episode where Randy starts? So, contrast that. How do we avoid the Randy Marsh result?
You're talking about the sycophancy problem, or?
Yeah, it's his person. Became his personal advisor.
I love that episode. It's so good. Yeah. So there's 3 problems. There's many, many problems with AI. First of all, we're all dead. It's the apocalypse is coming. I'm joking. No. I'm a super optimist here. Here's the 3 problems, right? Number 1 is like, of course, videos, all that stuff that we're going to get fooled by. Number 2 is hallucinations. Number 3 is data. And that's not in any particular order. I think data may be the biggest one. But let's talk about this for a second. The trust problem is everything. You may have so many people in your life that are like, I know I already used it, but you know what? It lied to me, so I didn't go back. It's so much better now. It's so much better now, okay? But the sycophancy problem is one of three. So number one is hallucination, flat out lies to you. Number two is sycophancy. Connor, great idea. I'd be like, now I love working with people who are constantly like, Connor, amazing, you're a genius. I'm like, I am a genius. You know what I mean? Like, and it's great, it feels good. That's why they do it. But it's not helpful, right? It's great to have somebody like that who works for you, but that is not the person who's going to steer the ship. Sycophancy. Third problem, I did this for Masterclass. So I have if you know the brand Masterclass, I have a Masterclass coming out on AI, coming out actually this Friday. And the whole thing I'm talking about there, or one of the things I'm talking about there is context. That's the third, which is, hey, help me start a new HR tech company. Sure, here's some great information. It all looks amazing, but then you realize it's pulling from 2022. Context matters. Context matters. So it's not just the sycophancy problem, it's not just hallucinations, it's also context. Remember, this is trust. This is why your brains matter. This is why quality control is everything, even when it comes to agents. Because it's not just about machine learning, it's more than that. Please. Yep.
Yes,
Okay, one quick question, I'm walking off.
loved your talk. A lot of good analogies on why people use AI wrongly, etc. But a practical problem for many in the room, the thought of AI builders and AI users. A lot of examples most of your examples were people using AI.
Yep.
For those of us working behind corporate firewalls using our proprietary data, we have to build the
Yes.
AI.
Yeah. Good luck with that. All right, everybody. No, I mean, totally different problem. And if we had more time, we'll talk offline. All right, good luck building, everybody. All right, thank you so much.